Aye.
Okay. Now, Brad? What other?
Do we need a vice chair?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's nominate a vice chair then.
Because you might have a reason not to be here.
Is there anybody interested in serving or nominating someone to serve as vice chair of this committee?
You interested in vice chair?
I could be happy to do
I
that.
can, Phil Johnson.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Very good. Okay, Brad, what committee appointments do we need to make today?
So the only committee appointment that I think is needed is the vacant position on the legislative committee. And as of yesterday, the city of St. Petersburg appointed Lisa Wheeler Brown to be the new, to be on the PSTA board, replacing Wingate Newton, who was on the legislative committee. So I have not personally spoken. Well, I have spoken to Lisa Wheeler Brown, but not specifically about the legislative committee. But that would be the vacant slot, unless we could do some shuffling.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, are these the recommended membership on committees, or is this existing?
It's existing.
This is existing.
So
This is what the board, what your committee and the board then approved in December.
Okay. I didn't recall that Darden moved off of legislative. Was that?
She did. She's still on planning, but
Okay.
she's off of legislative.
Okay.
Oh, she did come up with legislative
Yeah.
totally?
She's not on there.
Right, so there's 4 members. There's Chair Diamond of the Legislative Committee, Vice Chair Janet Long, this would just happened on Wednesday of this week, Patty Johnson, and Doug Beavis.
So you need a 5th member?
Yeah.
And wasn't at one point Pat Gerard on the committee?
She was.
She was.
She went to planning.
Okay.
She's now on planning.
And this is just a procedural question, Brad, but how often, I don't think we want the nominating committee to be meeting every month, right? So, how often are we doing this exercise? Just once a year, right? We fill out our
3 times a year.
3 times a year?
Or after an election. and
Or
it
after an
changes.
election. Okay,
No.
that makes sense. So really the only action that we're going to have to take for this year, or until the next change in the membership of our board, is appointing a 5th member of the legislative committee. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Technically, this committee would not have to meet until probably sometime before the end of the year, after the November election.
Okay.
Unless some of these city people have an election in March, maybe.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they
Okay.
do.
When the city changes in the appointment for the year.
But right now, Lisa Wheeler Brown is not on any of these.
Right, she's not on any of them, and we do have the one legislative committee open slot.
And are there any other open committee spots?
All the other committees do have 5.
Okay.
We've had an alternate to both the planning and finance, and there is a vacancy. The alternate for finance is open also.
Okay.
But that's...
So then, am I correct in thinking that really the choice is simple? The choice is sort of made for us in that we want to nominate our new commissioner, Wheeler Brown, to a committee, and the only committee spot that is available is the legislative committee. Is that correct?
Not really, because
Okay.
she could potentially be a nominee for the alternate for finance,
Or
which
the-
would be a great place to learn
Or the
some
alternate
of
for
the,
finance.
some of the
Right.
foundation of what makes PSTA tick. I don't know her background well, but I think we have to, just my opinion, with new members, it is, as we all know,
Yeah.
it is a huge learning curve when you come on PSTA because there are so many moving parts. So it seems a little unwieldy to me in the first blush of a brand new career, really, that they would come on and be a member of a committee like legislative, especially when we have such complex things poised to go forward as a legislative committee. That maybe finance would be a good place for her to start. Brad is looking at me rather quizzically. I don't know if that
Well,
makes any
and-
No,
sense.
I think you're onto something. It would certainly bring some excellent diversity to the boys of the finance committee. There's no females on that committee.
Well, then, I nominate Lisa Wheeler for finance.
Second.
As an alternate.
But I would just say, I think the finance committee also has, as we've been dealing with the bus technology issues, certainly lots of tech complex issues as well. I mean,
Well, none of
those
it is
three
easy,
committees.
Brad.
I think Commissioner Welch has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of in line with that. Do we have, because Lisa's, going to be inundated. She's got a lot of council issues to deal with.
Right.
First of all, yesterday was on the raise issue.
Right.
Yeah.
And now, you're right, there's a whole bunch of stuff to learn in PSTA. Do you have like an orientation for new members?
We do.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
How intense is it, or is it like a one session, or?
Right now, it's a one long session, and it's sort of an orientation to what's going on at the policy level, an introduction to PSTA, about our rules and regulations, a history of PSTA, and a tour. The executive committee, as you know, has discussed perhaps doing some kind of more ongoing training thing, kind of like the MPOs do.
I would be very supportive of that because I remember when I came on PSTA, and this is not a slam at anybody, I never had an in-depth conversation with you, Brad, until I've been on here for a couple years. And so I think that it ought to be a training workshop that the entire board is invited to come to. Because I've never been on a tour. I have never been on a tour.
Well, when I got appointed, I had a very good orientation session
You did?
with Brad. Yeah.
Well, maybe
What
it
year
was
was
me.
That was, that was recently. That
Yeah.
was
And a
20.
lot of
That
things
was
have
20. Whenever I got appointed, 2014 or 2015. So.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
2012 when.
I came on.
Right.
We were in the throes of the big,
Green light,
huge green
right.
light initiative.
That was the focus.
Yeah.
But I do think, just in talking about this appointment, I think,
And my appointment with Lisa Wheeler Brown is scheduled now for next week.
and I will say that the one-on-one appointment I thought was helpful as a new person because you're more willing to ask questions.
Sure.
Right.
In a, in a more.
Right.
But,
And I'm not saying take away from that, but I do think that, well, we had the workshop last year, the strategic planning one. Isn't it time for us to do an update on that? So it could coincide with some orientation type stuff as well, which I just think would be a great refresher for everyone.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree. I think at least having that annual workshop, just
Yeah.
Offsite or either
Yeah.
here, is a good idea. But back to Lisa, I would support that you made a motion
Well, I
for her to
did,
be
kind of.
finance
You
performance
did,
manager.
I seconded.
Okay, we're
Okay.
done.
there's a motion and a second.
But I wouldn't, are you saying as an alternate or as a regular member?
Well, I don't know, do we have an opening for a
Is there
regular
a
member?
limit to?
No. I mean, it doesn't the rules and regulations say 5?
Minimum of
Each,
5, is that a cap?
I think it says that the committees will be made up of 5 members. The nominating committee appoints or recommends.
You don't want 6 because then you have an even number, and what if it's a tie? How do you rate that?
But I'm not in love with alternate. I think she needs to be a full member.
I
of some
agree, but
committee.
is there somebody that wants?
Quite frankly, the alternate for that committee, the only one and only alternate that's ever been for that committee was Curtis Holmes, and he never came to one meeting as an alternate. So Commissioner Walsh's comment is valid, but maybe I'll try to position it with Commissioner Brown, Lisa Wheeler Brown.
Well, I think there are a couple of issues here. I mean, I think one issue is the fact that the committees, as a result of the staggered schedule of municipal elections, we have people coming onto the board after committees have filled up. And so there will be a portion of a year for those new board members where they are basically assigned a committee without the opportunity of going through our normal process. Is that right?
It could be, and as an alternate, it puts her in a position of being able to learn. I don't know.
If I were coming in,
Yeah.
I would want to be a member of the committee.
I agree.
Not the only board member who's an alternate.
And I will say,
No other committee.
yeah, I will say that I think in terms of the scheduling of this meeting, and this is not criticism, this is just an idea in terms of the future nominating committee meetings. I think it'd be helpful when we have new members that we need to assign to a committee to have first have had your meeting with them and have a discussion about the various committee openings so that we know.
Right.
So we're
What
not
they
sort
have
of,
an interest
so
in.
we're not sort of totally shooting in the dark.
Line
But
right now.
But what about the concept of nominating her both to serve as an alternate on the Finance Committee and to serve, to Commissioner Welch's point, since we want her to serve on a committee, to serve on the Legislative Committee, since that's the committee where there is an opening.
I support that.
And then, and then obviously when we get to the process toward the end of the year, everyone will go through the nominating process to, Bill?
I would support that for now, with that we're inviting her to participate in these two committees. You're appointed to them if you so choose. If she says, no, I don't really want that, then I'm interested in something else. I mean, these aren't indentures.
Yeah, I agree totally.
The other thing.
We're not?
We didn't get the memo.
The other thing that we might consider is, with the workload of the Planning and the Finance Committee, considering having 7 members instead of just 5, we would get more of the board members involved in those really core committees if we have people that are interested. I don't want to appoint somebody and then they never
Yeah,
show
that's
up.
the question.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, to all of your points, that it does take a while for folks, even folks to even know what they're interested in. I mean, we've had a pretty good example in the last year of Commissioner Gerard being appointed to the Legislative Committee, and she's had much more of a lot more questions about the community bus plan and the planning aspects, and not as much on Tallahassee or DC policy stuff. So, and then she's now made that transition to the planning committee. But the Legislative Committee has taken on someone like Mayor Beavis, or, well, we have the other 3 members right here, and gotten folks interested in that. So they both have qualities.
Well, okay, well, we have a motion and a second to start with that we need to resolve on appointing Commissioner Wheeler Brown to serve as an alternate to the Finance Committee. So I think, yes, Commissioner.
Would the maker of the motion accept your alternative of, in addition to that, adding her to the legislative?
I thought we did.
We already did it.
Oh, okay. And will you?
We voted on that?
Yes, now the one that's on the floor now is putting Lisa in,
Legislative?
well, no,
I don't think we
no,
voted.
you're right, I'm sorry.
I actually don't think we did
We
vote
do have
yet.
a first, we have a first.
So I think procedurally what we should do is just
Amend the motion.
correct. And so there's an amendment to the motion,
To
which
add.
has been accepted to appoint her to the Legislative Committee and to serve as an alternate to the Planning Committee, with the understanding that will be communicated by Brad in his meeting that these are just starting points and that we would welcome her participation in whatever committee she thinks is the best fit for her interests. Right?
Right.
Okay. Okay, so let's take a vote on that amended motion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, any other business?
I
Yes.
have two thoughts. One is, I would suggest that we announce that something, that we have a practice that we've allowed any board member can come to any committee, they can participate in the discussion, but they're not a voting member. And I'm not sure that some of the members know that that's an option for them. The other thing that I was going to bring up under other business, having watched the discussions about the board officers, I think that we have an opportunity to do more in the trying to find out who is interested and the basis of their interest and their, for instance, their experience. We clearly want to train people to aspire to those roles, but I think it would be helpful to know their experience with public transit, how do they ride, how often have they ever ridden our system, how they're involved in community outreach, their experience in chairing a large board, their board governance philosophy, and their special interests. So that because we can't sit and chat with people,
I think that's an excellent point, and as I said at the December meeting, I think our nominating process on the officer's position we have some room for improvement in that process, and I think maybe what we could do is as a nominating committee, direct staff to come up with a more kind of robust form that you fill out that doesn't just indicate first choice, second choice, third choice, but gets to some of those issues you're talking about. I would add to the list you just made, listing, when you were first appointed to serve on this board, what committees you've served on, what committees you've chaired, so that anybody on the nominating committee could look at the form and see, the background of your service. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but
I agree with that. Would we be asking staff to kind of vet that and make sure the responses are accurate? I mean, if somebody says I attended 100% of meetings, but they attended 50%.
that's a good point.
So I would just ask staff to take a look at it, not do an in-depth, audit.
Right. Commissioner.
But
I'm sorry. Commissioner Johnson and then Commissioner Long. Yep.
I can tell you right now that I could be here for the next 10 years, attend every single meeting that every committee has, and would not underline, not be a good chairman of the board.
What?
No, I wouldn't. I'm not. I don't feel that I would be. So I don't think that what you have attended makes you a good chairman for this board. I don't have that quality of leading 15.
Well, I think...
And I know that.
I think it's
but
just...
I might have an ego trip one day and say, oh, well, I've attended more, been there, done that.
Well, I think it's just to provide the nominating committee and the board with some more information. I don't think we're suggesting that there's any sort of default that the person with the most experience or whatever. I mean, I think it's just to provide us with more information in a more structured way to consider the nominations.
And this is for those who are expressing interest.
Right.
You're saying you're not expressing an interest in the board chair.
and that's okay too.
No, what I'm saying is that just because someone has attended everything, been there, done that,
Doesn't
that does
Doesn't
not
mean
make
that-
them a good leader. I'm not a good leader. I come up with great ideas and I'll support it,
Well, I
what's
think
going
you're a
on.
I think that's
So-
great self-awareness.
Pardon?
Commissioner Long, you had your hand up.
I wanted to say that on several boards that I sit on, have sat on in my life, there is a requirement for attendance at board meetings. and if you haven't attended at least 50% of the board meetings, that disqualifies you from being on the executive committee or rising to further. And I think that that's not a bad criteria, because if you don't show up, then you miss some of the critical things you need to know to be knowledgeable.
And I think our
But we
board
have-
does have an attendance requirement.
Yeah,
it does.
Because I remember reading about that. Well, I think that was a good discussion about how we can improve the process for the nomination of officers going forward, and maybe we'll meet, in our one-on-one meeting, we can talk more about the form and some of the ideas that Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah.
So we're formally asking staff to draft.
I think we should do that as a starting point.
I would make that motion if you want.
Sure. There's been a motion.
I'm the second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any other business to discuss? Brad, anything else for us?
No, I will see almost all of you on Monday again. We have a ribbon cutting at P-Tech at 9 o'clock because they are our latest entity to join UPass. So all those students are going to be able to ride for free.
The
Is that
Clearwater
included?
one, not
Yeah.
the St. Pete one?
Both.
Okay.
But it's
At
up
9
in Clearwater.
o'clock.
Well, they have a St. Pete campus.
Right. But I'm saying the
The
event
event
is
is
in Clearwater,
in
but the program
Clearwater.
covers both.
Yes.
Do you have any idea how many participants?
I
Have
can't
we
remember.
put that on Twitter? I'd like to repost that. 'Cause that's big for P-Tech.
Yeah. And it's right on, well, the Clearwater one is right on Route 52, one of our biggest routes, and the other one's right on.
Are you now
19.
moving into, we're adjourned, aren't
We're adjourned. Yeah.
we? Well, I guess I can't answer now.
Okay.
P-Tech is part of Pinellas County Schools, right?
Yes.
Yes, there's going to be a
So do you
school board
envision
member there.
expanding now into Pinellas County Schools?
That would be awesome.
Oh,
Yes,
I've been
I would love to do that.
Because they're already.
They're not on
they're
board
part
with
of
it yet.
Okay, while we're having this discussion in particular, Chris O'Donnell has sponsored a bill.
No, we're nominating, so we really shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta.
And then,
we gotta
well, then, okay, so 9 o'clock
adjourn
is the ribbon
meeting.
cutting, and then 11 o'clock is the executive committee
Yeah.
with,
Yes, I won't be there, so.
you're not going to the executive,
I
right?
know, that's what I'm saying.
Uh,
I'll be